Red and green lights flickered across the freshly paved driveway, bouncing off the steel gate Karoline Leavitt had installed just days earlier. The flashing strobes from the police cruiser cast long, broken shadows up the New Hampshire driveway, slicing across her porch. She stood there motionless, arms folded, watching two officers step out. Her eyes never left them. She hadn't wanted a gate, not at first, but after the latest wave of threats on X, it was no longer a debate. One anonymous post had read, "She'll pay for what she did in D.C." That was enough. Now, at nearly 9 o'clock on a Thursday night, the gate was locked, the wind was bitter, and her liberal neighbor had officially lost it. Emily Rosenthal, mid-50s, bob haircut sharp enough to slice a watermelon, stormed down her walkway like she was auditioning for local news. She waved her phone in the air, yelling loud enough for the whole street to hear, "Community emergency." She screamed the words like they were magic spells, like saying them would make this whole thing not about her resentment, but about public duty. Karoline didn't flinch. She'd seen real crises. She'd walked the halls of the West Wing. This was just another suburban meltdown. The older cop, maybe mid-60s, slow but sharp, wore a badge that read Sergeant Doyle. The younger one looked more alert, scanning everything. His name tag read Officer Rivera. Emily pointed at the gate with theatrical horror. Her voice hit that pitch only people who've never been told no can reach. "She's blocking a public road," she shrieked, waving her phone like a badge. "This is illegal." Karoline sighed, rubbing her temple. "This is my driveway. Private property. I've got the right to secure it." Emily wasn't done, not even close. She jabbed the air with her finger. "Everyone uses this road. It connects the cul-de-sac. You can't just throw up a gate because you worked for Trump." Karoline's tone never rose. "That's the thing about boundaries," she said. "People only notice them when they can't keep crossing them." Doyle approached, slow and steady. "Got papers to back that up, ma'am?" Without a word, Karoline turned, stepped inside, and came back with a manila folder. She handed it over like it was a mic drop. Property deed. Dated. Signed. Unchanged since the day she bought the place. Doyle flipped through the pages, his lips pressed into a flat line. "She's in the right," he said finally. "Private property. She's allowed to lock it." Emily's jaw went slack. She let out a half laugh, half sob. "You're kidding. She's lying. She's one of those MAGA freaks. Of course she has fake papers. This has been a shared road for 20 years. Rivera stayed silent. His eyes weren't on the women, they were on the street behind them. A black SUV, windows tinted darker than legal, slowed as it passed. Emily kept ranting, but Karoline wasn't listening anymore. Her gaze locked on the SUV. Her instincts kicked in. Something about that vehicle didn't sit right. Rivera noticed it too. The SUV rolled by slowly, then disappeared around the corner. He looked at the road again. His body language shifted. Sergeant Doyle handed the folder back to Karoline. "We're done here," he said. "It's legal. No violations." Emily nearly shrieked. "You're siding with her. She's part of everything wrong with this country." Karoline turned to her. "If you want to talk about wrong, maybe don't start by trespassing on your neighbor's driveway." Rivera took a step forward. "You see that SUV just now? Not the first time tonight?" Karoline nodded, low and serious. "That's the third time I've seen it in 2 hours." Rivera crouched near the gate, inspecting faint tire marks. "Not a local car," he muttered. "You got cameras?" "Full coverage." Karoline opened her phone. Security app loaded. She tapped the screen. "Hold driveways on live feed. Last night's footage too." Emily had gone quiet, for once. Her eyes followed the direction the SUV had vanished. She wasn't angry anymore. She was something else, pale. Doyle waved off the concern, probably just someone lost, but Rivera wasn't letting go. His voice dropped. "If anything else happens, call me direct." He pulled a card from his wallet, slipped it to Karoline. He hesitated, then said quietly, "I voted for Trump once, Be careful out here." Karoline gave a slight nod, then turned her back to Emily, who was now backing toward her house without a word. Just before she stepped inside, Emily whispered something. Her voice cracked. "You don't know who you're messing with." Karoline paused, turned. "What did you just say?" Emily blinked, then shook her head. "Nothing." She closed her door. Karoline locked the gate, walked back inside, set the folder down. Her house was quiet, too quiet. She opened her phone, rewound the feed. Last night. Two figures standing still at the edge of her driveway, right where she'd dug the day before, just standing. Then, without warning, gone. Not vandalism, not loitering, watching. She leaned forward, staring at the screen. Her heart wasn't racing from fear. It was something worse. Suspicion. "Wow, you made it this far. Let me know by hitting that like button." Karoline sat alone in her living room, the only light coming from her phone screen. The curtains were drawn tight, the house still except for the faint hum of the furnace and the distant rustle of wind through the pine trees outside. Her son was asleep down the hall, snuggled up with a worn Trump 2024 bear. But Karoline couldn't sleep, not after what she saw on the camera footage. She rewound again, paused. Two figures, standing still at the edge of the driveway. Midnight. Faces hidden under black hoods, bodies unmoving. No vandalism, no motion toward the house. Just watching. Exactly where she dug yesterday. She tapped the screen again, zoomed in. Their shoulders caught the faint glow of a street lamp, reflecting faintly like rain-soaked nylon. No movement for a full minute. Then one figure turned slightly and both of them disappeared into the darkness. Karoline's fingers tightened around the phone. They didn't break anything, didn't leave trash. They weren't neighborhood kids. They were waiting, or checking, or warning. She stood and stepped onto the back porch, clutching a flashlight in one hand. Cold air slapped her skin. The beam swept across the yard. Dead leaves, gravel, frost. Then the spot where she'd dug. The dirt still looked disturbed, but now with the light angled low, she saw it clearer. It wasn't just a random slab of concrete, it was an outline. Rectangular, sharp corners. Too smooth to be part of the old foundation. She stepped closer, crouched, ran her fingers along the edge. It felt cold. Colder than it should have in this weather. Like it was deeper than the frost line. Like it was sealed shut. It wasn't just a slab. It was a lid. And it wasn't supposed to be there, Karoline whispered to herself. What the hell is this? She remembered the digging just yesterday, trying to clear a space for a playset. Her shovel had clanged against something hard. She'd thought it was rock at first, but it hadn't felt like rock. It felt like something placed. She'd filmed it, briefly, close up. The texture, the reddish dirt packed around the edges, just in case. On impulse, she opened her encrypted White House security chat and sent the clip. One of the agents she still had access to from her days as press secretary. She didn't expect much. But an hour later, the reply came back. Not enough data to investigate. Stay cautious. Typical. Karoline rolled her eyes, shut the app, and opened her laptop. Pulled up footage from every night that week. Fast-forwarded through them. Nothing on night 1. Night 2. A blur. Something zipped past the camera too fast to catch. Night 3. Last night. There they were. She paused again, leaned in. The two figures had returned. Same time, same place, no movement, no trespassing. Just standing over the slab like they knew exactly what was buried beneath it. She turned the volume up, heard something new, a faint screech, metallic, like a lock being tested. Then silence, then footsteps crunching gravel, and finally, nothing. Her stomach turned. She stood again, shined the flashlight on the ground. The dirt around the slab had been moved, subtly, like someone had tried to uncover it or rebury it. They'd been here, physically, within 20 feet of her house. Her phone buzzed again. A direct message, anonymous, no name, no avatar. "Be careful," it read. You're being watched. She stared at it, then screenshotted it, sent it to Officer Rivera using the number on his card. Under 10 minutes later, he replied, "That SUV isn't registered locally. Tire marks don't match standard patterns. Meet me in the morning." Karoline didn't reply right away. She just stared through the blinds. The street outside was dim, silent, then headlights. Again, same SUV, creeping by slower this time, almost daring her to see it. Its engine barely made a sound, like it knew exactly how not to be noticed. Karoline raised her phone and started recording, zoomed in, tried to get the license plate, too blurry, unreadable. "Fine," she muttered. "Let's see who's faster." She posted it to X. "Who's this SUV stalking me? Over the gate or something else?" X, help me find out. Within minutes, the post was blowing up. 20,000 views, then 30, comment after comment, some mocking, some concerned. But one stood out. "Ask Emily, she knows something." Karoline's stomach twisted. She turned her head slowly, looked out the window toward the house next door. Emily's lights were still on. Her shadow passed back and forth behind drawn curtains, pacing, holding her head, moving like someone barely keeping it together. She's scared, Karoline thought. Not angry, not vindictive, scared. Karoline sat back down, her fingers still wrapped around the phone. She watched the driveway footage one more time. The two figures, the SUV, the slab, and that cold screech. Something was under her property, something someone didn't want found, and tomorrow morning she'd find out what. The sky was still dark when Karoline stepped out onto the driveway. Her breath curled in front of her like mist, the morning air bitter against her skin. A steaming travel mug of coffee warmed her fingers but did nothing to calm her nerves. She didn't need to review the footage again. It was burned into her memory now, the SUV, the shadows, the concrete slab, and the message, "Don't dig more. They're not kidding." Across the street, Emily's porch light flicked on. For a second, Karoline saw her silhouette behind the glass, shoulders hunched, arms wrapped tight across her chest like a child bracing against a storm. A vehicle rolled up slowly, no flashing lights this time. Rivera stepped out in jeans and a Patriots hoodie, no badge, no partner, no cruiser. His eyes were alert but tired. He carried no clipboard, only a quiet sense of purpose. "You okay?" he asked softly. Karoline nodded and motioned toward the driveway. "That's where I dug, right there." Then they showed up. Rivera knelt beside the slab, ran his fingers along the edge. Concrete was smooth, too clean for an old foundation, and deep, like it wasn't just dropped here, like it was placed. "Tire marks?" he asked. "Still there." Karoline pointed, faint but clear, thick tread, deep impressions, not standard size. "I checked the footage again last night. That SUV came by 3 times, always slow, always quiet, and always after midnight." Rivera stood, his voice lowered. "I ran the plate through the system. Nothing, no hits, not even a partial match. It's not registered, not here, not anywhere." Karoline folded her arms, the wind slicing across her jacket. "You think this ties to DC? To the threats?" He looked at her steady and calm. "You've touched something, Karoline, and someone doesn't want you to." From the corner of her eye, she saw a flash of movement. Emily, standing in the doorway, hands trembling at her sides. She looked like she hadn't slept all night. Karoline didn't wait for an invitation. She crossed the lawn with firm steps and stood at the edge of the porch. "You know something," she said. "Spill it, Emily." Now Emily flinched like she'd been slapped. "You don't get it, Leavitt. That thing under the driveway, it's dangerous." Karoline's voice stayed cold. "What do you know?" Emily stepped back, one foot behind the other, retreating like prey. "I don't want to be involved. My brother, he found it years ago. He dug. Same place." Then, they came. Rivera stepped forward. "Who's they?" Emily shook her head quickly. "I don't know. But they weren't from here. They didn't knock, didn't talk, just showed up. Suits, glassy eyes, like they didn't blink. 3 days later, my brother's house burned to the ground, and he just disappeared. Karoline narrowed her eyes. He moved, number he stayed, but he quit everything. Journalism, politics, writing, he shut down, never talked about it again. But I remember what he said before it happened. He said he found something real, and then he told me not to dig. Ever. Karoline glanced back at the slab. Well, I dug. Emily's voice dropped to a whisper. Then they'll come back. Rivera shifted, his gaze sharp. They already have. Karoline opened her phone, pulled up a screenshot. A DM from ex-anonymous again. Ask Emily about her brother. He worked for a leftist group. She turned the screen toward Rivera. Legit? He read quickly, then nodded. Her brother, Tom Rosenthal, investigative reporter, wrote about covert land deals in New England, quit suddenly in 2018, no reason given. Emily backed against the doorframe, pale as the frost-covered lawn. You think I wanted any of this? I begged him to forget it, but he couldn't. And now you've stirred it all back up. Karoline's tone turned razor-sharp. I'm not afraid of ghosts in the ground. Emily's hands trembled. You should be. That SUV, it parked outside my house last night. They weren't looking at me. They were watching your window. Karoline said nothing, just turned back toward her own yard. Rivera walked with her. You believe her? He asked. I think she's terrified, and that's usually when people start telling the truth. Rivera nodded. I'll dig into her brother, see what he wrote before he vanished. Maybe he left breadcrumbs. Karoline stepped back onto her driveway and looked down at the slab. They want this covered up. That means there's something here worth seeing. You plan to open it? She didn't hesitate. Yes. Rivera crossed his arms. Then I'll bring tools tomorrow. You're not doing this alone. As he walked to his car, Karoline opened X again. The SUV post was still going viral, over 50,000 views. Dozens of people analyzing tire marks, plate blur, comments flying in. But one DM stopped her cold. Stop digging or your whole family pays. She didn't panic, she didn't scream. She screenshot it, sent it to Rivera. Then she posted it to her feed. They're threatening me. This is proof. X, keep watching. The post exploded. 100,000 views in 20 minutes. No turning back now. The morning fog rolled in thick and low, curling around the tires of Rivera's truck as it pulled up to Karoline's driveway. She was already outside, standing still with a half-drunk coffee in one hand, bundled up in a coat but still shivering, though not from the cold. Inside, her mother was watching her son, keeping him distracted with blocks shaped like the White House and red, white, and blue puzzle pieces. He had no idea what was buried just feet from where he played. Rivera stepped out of the truck, carrying a heavy canvas bag over his shoulder. Crowbar, flashlight, gloves, duct tape, a compact handgun hidden under his coat. His eyes scanned the street slowly, checking for movement. You sure about this? He asked, voice low. Karoline nodded. They won't stop, so neither will I. She had already posted a live stream announcement on X. The post had over 50,000 views before Rivera even pulled in. She didn't do it for attention, she did it for protection. The more eyes watching, the fewer shadows for people to hide in. She tapped Go Live. Her voice was steady, but her stomach twisted. We're about to find out what's under my driveway. If I disappear, this is why. X, keep watch. She turned the camera to the ground. The slab was still marked by tire tracks. Last night, someone had been here again. The SUV hadn't even bothered to speed off. It had idled near the gate like it was taunting her. Rivera set his bag down and pulled out the crowbar. Emily's door creaked open behind them. She stepped out in an oversized coat, hair pulled back messily, face pale and drawn like she hadn't slept in a week. Her hands were tucked deep into her pockets. You're insane, Leavitt, she said, voice trembling. You don't want to see what's down there. Karoline didn't look away from the slab. Then tell me, right now, what's under it? Emily's lips quivered. Her eyes darted like she was searching for escape routes. My brother said it was dangerous, not just weird, dangerous. He said it was something built to watch people, like a spy thing, old, Russian. He found it. Then they came, and now it's happening again. Karoline stared at her, then help, or stay out of the way. Emily hesitated, then muttered, "Fine, if I stay quiet, I'm a target anyway." Rivera handed Karoline the crowbar. She knelt at the slab, wedged it into the seam, and began to pry. The metal groaned. Dirt crumbled. Rivera joined her, pulling with his full weight. With a final loud screech, the slab shifted. Then, population. A gust of cold, musty air whooshed upward. They all stepped back, covering their noses. Rivera aimed his flashlight down. A ladder, rusted narrow, descended into pitch black. Karoline stared into it. This isn't a basement. Rivera's voice was barely above a whisper. "Number, this is something else." Emily backed away. Her knees wobbled. "I don't like this." Karoline didn't flinch. Leaving means they win. I didn't work for Trump to run from people in ski masks. She pulled her phone back out, filmed everything, the opening, the ladder, the dark. Then handed Rivera the flashlight. "You first." He clipped it to his shoulder, adjusted the grip on his coat, and began to descend. "Clear so far," he called. Karoline followed, one rung at a time. The metal ladder groaned with every step. Her palms were sweating through her gloves. She didn't look down. She just kept moving. Emily hesitated, then sighed and climbed after them. When Karoline reached the bottom, her boots hit cold concrete. The air down there was dense, heavy, like breathing through wet cloth. Her flashlight revealed a narrow corridor, maybe 4 feet wide, with gray steel walls and faint markings she couldn't immediately place. Rivera stepped forward and pointed at a sign on the wall. That's Cyrillic, Russian, old, probably Cold War era. Karoline's heart pounded harder. Emily stayed close to the ladder, eyes wild. Tom said this was built to watch someone. He didn't say who. Karoline swept her flashlight down the corridor. Faint boot prints. Not hers, not Rivera's. Someone had been here recently. This wasn't abandoned. They turned a corner, and there it was, a metal door, rusted at the hinges but slightly ajar. A faint hum came from inside. Electronic, still alive. Rivera raised his hand. "Listen." Karoline stopped. Somewhere deeper, machines, humming, steady. She turned to Rivera. "If this is Russian, it could be tied to Trump. One of those old Cold War stations, listening posts, or sleeper cells." Rivera nodded. "Or someone else has reactivated it." Karoline didn't wait. She pushed the door open. Inside, the flashlight illuminated a small room lined with panels, cables, and dusty monitors. Old CRT screens flickered with static. A control panel still blinked weakly in the dark. Rivera approached the main terminal, brushed dust off the keyboard. A faded logo emerged, hammer and sickle. Karoline felt her breath catch. No one ever mentioned this in the press briefings, no satellite photos, nothing. But it was here, right under her house. She filmed everything. No signal underground, but she saved the video for later. Her followers needed to see it. Rivera pointed to a microphone embedded in the wall, wired, still functioning. "They could hear us, whoever's running this place." Karoline stepped up and yanked the wire out. Sparks popped. The mic went dead, but the console lights didn't stop blinking. She turned to Emily. "What else did your brother see?" Emily's voice cracked. "Papers, maps, names, cities. He said he saw DC marked, the CIA, the White House." Karoline clenched her fists. "This isn't just a forgotten base. It's still active." Rivera opened a cabinet beside the control panel. Inside were old papers, cassette tapes, and a tape recorder. He handed one to Karoline. The label read, "Project Spider, 1985. She slid it into her coat pocket. I'll analyze it later. Emily was shaking. This is bad. We shouldn't be here. Karoline faced her with fire in her eyes. Then you better pray we figure out what it's for, because someone still is. Karoline stood in the middle of the underground control room, her flashlight casting long beams over tangled wires and dust-choked equipment. Her breath was visible now, hanging in the frigid air like smoke. The old Soviet base didn't just feel cold, it felt sealed, like it had waited decades for someone to find it. Rivera was silent, eyes locked on the main console. His hand hovered near the pistol under his coat. Emily clung to the wall like it was the only thing keeping her upright. The red dot on one of the flickering screens pulsed over Washington, D.C. Karoline leaned closer. The keyboard was clean, the console warm. This place hadn't just been used decades ago. Someone had been here, recently. She hit a key. Static buzzed. Then Russian text blinked onto the screen. Rivera squinted and read aloud. Last order received. Monitor target. Report to D.C. sent last week. Karoline stepped back, heart hammering. I'm the target. Rivera opened a drawer beneath the console. Inside were more cassette tapes labeled in Cyrillic. One read Project Spider, another simply said Activation. He pulled out a plastic access card marked with a faded hammer and sickle. Whoever ran this didn't care about hiding anymore. Suddenly, from the hallway behind them, metal clacked, sharp, echoing off the walls. Karoline killed her flashlight. Darkness swallowed the room. She dropped to one knee behind a cabinet. Rivera motioned silently. Emily crouched beside them, barely breathing. Footsteps, not rushed, not frantic, deliberate. 3 sets, maybe more. Then light, artificial, headlamps, sweeping through the hallway like search beams. Karoline peeked through a gap between cables. 3 figures entered, all dressed in black. Tactical gear, no insignia, no badges, no faces. Masks pulled tight. One held a pistol, others had odd-looking devices, scanners or weapons she didn't recognize. They moved with precision, military or something close. They weren't here to explore, they were here to erase. One figure stepped to the console, typed rapidly. The screen lit up again. Target confirmed. Switching to English, he spoke into a mic clipped to his vest. Erase all traces. Karoline clenched her teeth. That was her they were talking about. The target. Emily's hand jerked, hitting a loose bolt near the cabinet. A metallic clang echoed through the room. The nearest figure spun around. His light swept the floor, then stopped. Movement. Someone's here. Rivera leapt up. Freeze! Police! The figure raised his gun and fired. The bullet struck a metal server box near Karoline's head, sending sparks flying. She dove to the side, grabbing the crowbar from Rivera's bag. Run! She shouted, swinging hard and catching the nearest figure in the leg. He howled and dropped. Emily screamed. Rivera fired twice. The second shot caught another agent in the shoulder. The man staggered back, slamming into a control panel. More boots pounded down the hallway behind them. Karoline pulled Emily by the arm. They bolted through the corridor, Rivera behind them, covering every turn. Go! Up the ladder! He shouted. They reached the hatch. Karoline grabbed the first rung, then froze. The hatch slammed shut from above with a deafening clang. Sealed. No light came through the seams, no hope of lifting it. They turned back. Lights were approaching fast. Agents calling out in clipped Russian. No hesitation, no mercy. Karoline spotted a small supply room off to the side and yanked Emily into it. Rivera followed and shut the door silently. They crouched behind stacked crates. Karoline pressed her phone against her chest, shaking. If we don't make it, this can't die down here. She opened the camera app, whispered into the lens. If you're watching this, I've uncovered a Soviet base under my house. Someone's using it, still active. They're targeting me, because of Trump. She saved the clip. Still no signal underground, but it was proof. It existed, And if she ever got out, she'd post it to the world. Outside the door, the footsteps slowed. Voices murmured. Karoline peeked through a crack. One of the masked figures was holding a scanner. He pointed it toward the hallway. It beeped, then stopped. No movement. They're hiding. Orders, clear the base, lockdown. Karoline pulled back. Rivera whispered, they're going to seal this place. Emily clutched her knees, rocking back and forth. I told you they'll kill us all. Karoline ignored her. Her eyes were on the door, her fingers on the crowbar. They know we're here, but they want it clean. No bodies, no noise. Rivera nodded. That's why they haven't stormed in yet. The red light above the door started blinking. Karoline turned. What's that? Rivera leaned in. Timer. Could be for gas. Could be a blast. We've got minutes. Maybe less. Karoline scanned the room. Her flashlight found a narrow vent near the ceiling. Too small, Rivera said. Not for the message, she answered. She pulled the Project Spider tape from her coat, shoved it into a console still powered, hit record, whispered her name, the date, what she'd found. Then she ejected the tape, wrapped it in duct tape from Rivera's bag, and shoved it deep into the vent. If we don't make it, someone will. The blinking lights sped up. The hallway outside was silent again. Too silent. Emily whimpered. Karoline stood and faced the door. I'm not going out like this. Rivera stood beside her. He handed her the flashlight. I've got your back. They waited. Boots, just beyond the door. Then a voice. Come out, Leavitt. We know who you are. Karoline's blood ran cold. She raised the crowbar. Yeah? Then you know I don't go quietly. The seconds ticked louder than the machines. The red light above the door blinked faster now, pulsing like a heartbeat, one that didn't feel like it belonged to anyone in the room. Karoline gripped the crowbar with both hands. Rivera stood beside her, his pistol drawn, eyes fixed on the narrow hallway just beyond the steel door. Emily crouched near the wall, hands over her ears, eyes wide and hollow. They know my name, Karoline whispered. That means they've been watching me longer than I thought. Rivera didn't answer. He just nodded once, focused, calculating, listening. Another voice came from the hallway, calm, almost casual. You can't escape, Miss Leavitt, but you can cooperate. No one has to get hurt. Karoline leaned closer to the door. Then why seal the hatch? No reply. Exactly. She turned to Rivera. We need a way out. Now. He scanned the room quickly, then moved to the far wall, tapped the steel with the butt of his flashlight. Sounded solid, but then there. A faint seam just wide enough to be something. A panel. Emergency exit. Hidden door. He dropped to his knees, traced the edges. It's sealed tight, he muttered. No handle, no latch, just cold metal. Karoline stepped over, crouched beside him. If it's sealed from the outside, we'll never get it open. But if it's internal, maybe we've got a shot. She reached into Rivera's gear bag, pulled out a collapsible pry bar and jammed it into the seam. Sparks flew. Emily screamed behind them. They're going to kill us. Just let them take the files. Let them clean it up. Karoline didn't stop. Her arms shook with effort. Her lungs burned. But she kept pulling. I don't care if they scrub this place off the map, she hissed. I won't let them bury the truth. Behind them, the door rattled. They're breaching, Rivera said, rising. His gun aimed at the hinges. Get back. Emily ducked behind a rusted server rack, sobbing. Karoline stood, crowbar in one hand, flashlight in the other. Her voice was steady now, cold. I was press secretary to the President of the United States. You think I scare easy? A loud clang rang out. Then another. The door buckled slightly inward. Rivera aimed higher, waited. Karoline edged toward the far corner, raised her phone. One last clip, one last message. If this is the end, you deserve to see it. This is not a theory, not a hoax. This is real, and it's happening. X, if I disappear, you know where I was last seen. She saved the video. No signal. But if she got out, it would be posted within minutes. The door creaked. Then a hiss. Gas. Rivera stepped back, covering his mouth with his sleeve. Karoline grabbed a rag from the crate, shoved it to her face. Emily shrieked, curling tighter into herself. Not gas to kill, gas to disorient. "They're trying to drag us out alive," Rivera shouted. "They want to finish this quiet." Karoline didn't hesitate. She picked up a broken metal pipe, shoved it through the lower part of the doorway, blocking the gas flow as best she could. "You want quiet?" she growled. "Then you picked the wrong house." Another clang. The door cracked open 2 inches. A boot forced it wider. Rivera fired, a short burst. The figures staggered back. The others stayed low, tactical, quiet. Karoline lunged, swung the crowbar into the opening. A cry of pain echoed. The door slammed back shut. For now. She stumbled backward, coughing through the cloth. "We're running out of time." Rivera turned toward the wall again. "Help me. If there's a way out, it's here." Karoline joined him. Together, they pried at the seam, inch by inch. The metal began to give. Then, click. The wall panel popped loose. Rivera yanked it open, a narrow crawl space, barely large enough to move through, but it led somewhere, and right now that was everything. "Go," he said. Karoline turned to Emily. "Now or stay here and take your chances." Emily hesitated, then scrambled forward, squeezing into the crawl space. Rivera followed. Karoline went last, sliding the panel back into place behind them. They crawled for what felt like forever. Metal scraped their knees. Wires hung low from the ceiling. The air was thicker here, older, but quieter. After 5 agonizing minutes, the passage opened into another room. Small, no lights, no sounds, but a rusty stairwell twisted upward into the dark. They climbed fast, lungs burning, hands numb. At the top, another hatch. Karoline shoved it open with everything she had. Fresh air hit her face like a slap, cold, sharp, real. They were in the woods, behind her house. The old stone foundation of what looked like an abandoned shed stood behind them. No lights, no roads, just trees and frost. She staggered out, breathing hard, Rivera behind her. Emily collapsed to the grass, crying silently. Karoline raised her phone, signaled back. She tapped post. The final clip uploaded in seconds. Then she opened her notes app, typed 1 line. "They didn't stop us, and they won't stop the truth." She hit send. Her X account exploded within moments. Thousands of reposts. Hashtags trending. Soviet base Leavitt underground. Protect the truth behind her, Rivera was already calling it in, off the record. They weren't safe yet, but they were free, for now. By the time the sun broke through the trees over rural New Hampshire, Karoline Leavitt's video had already surpassed 3 million views. It was the final post of a sleepless night, raw, breathless, unfiltered. Just her face lit by a flashlight, eyes sharp but exhausted, voice whispering through clenched teeth as she showed the inside of a Cold War Soviet control hub buried under her own backyard, a control hub that wasn't dead. One still pulsing with data, with orders, with names like hers attached. She didn't say it explicitly, but she didn't have to. The subtext was loud enough to rattle. "They're still here, they never left. And I was a target because I stood next to Trump." What began as a property dispute with a shrill neighbor had unraveled into a full-blown conspiracy that reached back decades and stretched forward like barbed wire across everything Karoline thought she'd left behind in Washington. It wasn't just about Cold War ghosts or spy tech sealed in concrete. It was about what happens when silence becomes the expectation, and someone breaks it anyway. And yet somehow the story wasn't just hers, it was Emily's too. Emily Rosenthal had started out as a cliché, liberal, middle-aged, comfortable in her outrage and contempt. She called Karoline names, mocked her, laughed when the cops arrived, believed her politics made her righteous. But when real danger entered the frame, when the SUV circled and the base began to hum, she cracked. Not because she was weak, but because deep down she already knew the truth. She had seen it before, through her brother's eyes. She had just spent years pretending it wasn't real. In the end, she followed Karoline into the dark, and that choice, the willingness to face something bigger than personal bias, might have saved all their lives. This is what made the video go viral, not just the drama, not the shadowy agents or the Soviet equipment or the sealed ladder to nowhere. It was the collision of identities, of former enemies forced to survive together, of two women on opposite sides of America's political canyon, clawing their way through the cold dirt towards something human, something true. The internet exploded. Reactions came in fast and polarized. Right-wing influencers hailed Karoline as a patriot, a digital Paul Revere who dared to speak when silence was safest. MAGA forums filled with speculation. Some said the base was part of a broader deep state op, proof of infiltration. Others focused on the Russian language on the consoles, calling it a leftover piece of election interference. On the other side, skeptics rolled in. The footage was fake, they claimed. AI-generated, a performance, a stunt. Emily, now reluctantly thrust into the spotlight, was branded a plant by both sides. Some said she deserved what she got for flipping. Others said she was a hero for finally stepping up. It didn't matter. The narrative had already taken root. Karoline's post became one of the most reshared political videos of the year. Hashtags spun out like wildfire. Leavitt base, deep bunker, silent surveillance. But beneath the noise, something else happened. Quieter, but more powerful. People started talking, not just yelling in the void of social media, but actually talking about surveillance, about forgotten Cold War systems, about loyalty and fear, about what it meant to be watched for what you believe, and whether truth still matters in a country where facts are filtered through algorithms and echo chambers. The story hit because it tapped into all of it. The fear of being targeted for your politics, the exhaustion of feeling like the enemy in your own neighborhood, the terror of finding something no one's supposed to see and realizing it sees you back. But more than that, it reminded people what it means to stand your ground. Karoline didn't run. She didn't wait for permission. She documented, she posted. She called it out in real time using the very platforms that often fuel division to demand transparency. It was the perfect storm of modern media mechanics. A charismatic figure, a threatening mystery, real-world danger, a small-town setting that could have been anywhere, and the tools to broadcast it all to millions without a single filter, and Karoline knew it. She didn't hide behind vague symbolism or cautious language. She used the name Trump, repeated it, claimed the risk, owned the consequences. Because she understood what most politicians forget, storytelling matters more than spin, and truth told with clarity cuts deeper than any press release ever could. She leaned into emotion. She showed fear, anger, resolve. She showed a woman at war with shadows, not with ideology, and that's why people believed her. But belief came with a cost. By day 2, federal agents arrived, not masked intruders but actual government representatives. Unmarked cars, careful words, friendly but firm. They asked questions, requested footage, suggested she stay quiet while we investigate. Emily got the same treatment. Her house was swept. Her brother's old files were taken. Rivera, unofficially, was told to back off. He didn't. He met Karoline in a diner 2 towns over, gave her a burner phone, told her to watch her 6, said the same tire patterns from the SUV were found outside a military surplus storage lot that shouldn't have had anything moving out of it for years. It wasn't over, not even close. But something had shifted. For the first time in months, maybe years, people who disagreed weren't just fighting, they were listening. Because the story didn't just expose a bunker, it exposed the cracks in our own foundations, the distrust, the fear, the tribalism, the way we assume the worst about anyone wearing a different color hat. Karoline's story turned a gate dispute into a national reckoning, and maybe that's the greatest threat of all, to those who want control. Not that the bunker existed, but that someone like Caroline dared to say it out loud, that millions watched, that people like Emily stepped out of their echo chambers to say, something's not right here. Because in the end, the real conspiracy isn't just about wires underground or data streams in secret rooms. It's about the way silence is enforced, how fear is weaponized, how neighbors turn to enemies, not because they're dangerous, but because someone tells them to. Caroline didn't expose a Soviet plot. She exposed an American wound. And people listened. Because deep down, even in a divided country, there's one thing most Americans still believe. The truth deserves light. If you believe the truth deserves light, don't let this story disappear. Like, share, and subscribe. Your voice is what keeps theirs from winning.